G'day.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Parkside Live. We are so glad that you've joined us, and we hope that you find our chat encouraging and leads you closer to Jesus.
Yeah. I wonder if you've ever found yourself in the middle of something. There's a business thinker out there, someone who actually owns quite a few businesses, and he says, his name's Alex Hormozy, and he says people will cheer you on at the launch party and they'll celebrate you when you achieve the goal, but it is the middle where it gets lonely and hard. And if you're in the process of rebuilding something, I think the middle is very hard. It's a very difficult place to be. That when you start something, and I don't even know for me, as I start a new project for my business, I'm excited at the beginning, the discussions, the possibilities, wherever it might lead. And I also get a lot of satisfaction from completing a project. You know, you've remodeled someone's rear garden, or you've completed an element like a deck or a particular wall. That's good. It's in the middle, you know. And sometimes it can be in the middle of the day when you're like, oh yeah. Sometimes it's a longer project and it's in the middle of the week or in the middle of the month. It can be quite difficult. I don't know. Do you find yourself excited about starting or challenged in the middle?
I mean, sometimes just starting can be a challenge in itself. You know, you're looking maybe at, even it can be just something mundane as, you know, tasks around the house or whatever. You can think, I need to do these things, but
surely not. Everyone loves cleaning up around the house.
There seems too many of them, and so the start can be daunting, but the end is usually the thing that you go, oh, so good that we finally, you know, ticked those things off or whatever. But I think the start and just the plodding along to get to the end can be difficult.
Yeah. And as you're watching this, I would encourage you to take a moment to reflect and think about, do I like the start? Am I excited by the start? Or as Renata, you mentioned, you know, do I find it difficult to start? Am I someone who just has that ability to keep going through the middle? And there are plenty of people like that. And there are also a lot of people who like to come in at the end. And celebrate. We're going to explore something a bit weird actually right now, but it talks about the challenge of completion. And so we're going to draw some inspiration from the scriptures. We're going to read from a book called Zechariah, and just a couple of short sentences here. And it says in Zechariah chapter 4, it says this: then he, and in this particular little piece, this person, Zechariah, is having an exchange with some kind of supernatural being. And so he says, then the supernatural being says to me, this is what the Lord says to Zerubbabel, who's another character in this piece. It is not by force nor by strength, but by my spirit, says the Lord of heaven's armies. Nothing, not even a mighty mountain, will stand before Zerubbabel's way. It will become a level plain before him. And when Zerubbabel sets the final stone of the temple in place, the people will shout, may God bless it, may God give grace to it. And then another message came to me from the Lord. Zerubbabel is the one who laid the foundations of this temple, and he will complete it. Then you will know that the Lord of heaven's armies sent me. Do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin, to see the plumb line in Zerubbabel's hand. Now, there's a whole lot going on in there. This story, this event, this episode is actually situated in real time. If you go back to the beginning of this story in chapter 1, Zechariah actually connects this to the rule of a particular king. It says that there was a king called Darius who was ruling at this time. Now, if you read through history books, Darius is a king who followed another king, Artaxerxes, who followed another king, Cyrus. And what actually happened is that years before this happened, that there were people who felt that they were God's people.
Yeah.
They lived in a place that they felt God wanted them to be in, and then turned in a different direction. They went, we would say, off the rails.
Yes.
They went away. They started to make arrangements, contracts with the nations that surrounding them. They started to worship deities from the nations around them instead of staying faithful. And God sent messenger after messenger, it would seem, to say, hey, you're going the wrong way, come back.
Yeah.
Now, this is all a bit of background, so thank you for bearing with us. But in this particular moment, what has happened is the city and this beautiful place of worship that was renowned the world over. There was gold everywhere. There was, known as Solomon's Temple, was destroyed, completely and utterly destroyed. The city was destroyed. And some people would say that that was a reflection of just how wayward these people have been. They've gone right off the rails. And so now what we're seeing is that this is happening in a moment of rebuilding.
Yeah.
They're trying to rebuild the city. This person, Zerubbabel, has the job of overseeing the redevelopment of the city, of the temple, as we've read here, and of the nation. And I think it's a moment for pause, for rebuilding. Rebuilding is difficult.
Yeah.
I'll give you a simple example. I'm someone who likes to exercise. It really helps me with my thinking, but also some of the more physical aspects of the work that we do. And when I'm doing well, I have a routine.
Yep.
5 days a week. Bang, 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 bang. I know what I'm doing. When I get out of that routine, I think, oh yeah, I've got to do this. My challenge is, for me, when I get out of that particular routine, it's usually because I'm working longer hours. That other work has to be done. And so I've got to find a way to rebuild.
Yep.
And I've got to tell you, even something as simple as a gym, rebuilding that routine is hard. I don't know. Do you find some things that you need to rebuild that you're facing?
Well, often it is just the good habits that I want to keep going with, whether it's how I eat, especially since, my cancer diagnosis and things that I said that I want to put into my body or not. If I even just break that for a little bit, I find it hard to rebuild because I go, oh, well, I've just done that. So, one more thing or, miss one more thing. I find it hard.
Yeah. And I think regardless of what you believe or not, rebuilding a personal practice is a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet we don't move through life in isolation, that we move through life in community. And so then you might add to it a challenge like rebuilding a relationship.
Yeah.
Perhaps there's been an incident or just some tension has built up in a relationship and you're trying to rebuild that connection. And so then it's not just you rebuilding your own personal practices, but then you're rebuilding an interaction with someone. And then you take that and you apply it maybe to a workplace where you're trying to rebuild some performance goals or your community involvement. And there are some social causes and some ways that particular groups of people are being treated that need to be rebuilt. In the country that we live in right now, there is still, we've just had a national election here, and one of the incidents there was some people rejecting a traditional practice of welcoming to country. And people who were pushing that line, the public said, no, we don't want that. We actually want to try and rebuild some respect for this particular group. So rebuilding is difficult. And we see that person here that is trying to rebuild a city and a nation. And I wonder, as you watch this, you may be in a period of rebuilding in your life. I wonder what it is that you are in the process of rebuilding. Perhaps it is a personal practice, and perhaps it is a relationship, and perhaps you're trying to rebuild a career. Perhaps you're involved in community causes and you're fighting to rebuild the place of a marginalised group of people in your community. It's a challenge. It is tough. And what we see here is that there's a particular statement that I want to focus on. As this guy Zechariah has this encounter. The first line, it says this, not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, says God. And when you hear that phrase, what do you think?
I just think, in one sense, I go, well, then I could just let go. Not necessarily to never do anything, but I don't maybe have to, I still have to try, but there's something about like a letting go, but it's kind of like I can breathe if it doesn't all hinge on me, I think is the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I would say there's something a bit deflating about that, that in this process of rebuilding, I want to be the person who goes in and uses all the strength that I have. And here we have this example that says, if we are following the way of God, that it's actually not about that.
Yeah.
But I think there's also a cautionary tale, because for some people, they celebrate, it's not all about me. For others, you might feel a bit frustrated. I think I can do this. But there's a middle ground. Like, this is not a promise to be passive.
No.
And if you find yourself in the middle of rebuilding, don't let faith convince you that you need to do nothing. Yeah. Because the line here is, mighty mountains will not stand in the way.
Yes.
That doesn't say there will be no mountains. Matter of fact, there's a guarantee that in the attempt to rebuild, that there will be challenges, but that they can be overcome through this thing, this spirit, this supernatural sense.
Yeah. No, I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's like there will be mountains, there will be challenges, but they kind of pale into insignificance when you're talking about God's power at work.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, there's something here. The Spirit of God is more than just power. And if you're not someone who believes in God, or you're finding your way back, talk of supernatural beings and the Spirit of God, it may be a bit bewildering and a bit woo-woo. And yet, I think most of us are actually quite comfortable celebrating the human spirit.
Yeah.
That when we see someone complete something great, we say that is a real statement about the human spirit.
Yeah.
You know, we see someone climb a physical mountain and they say, wow, that's a real testament to the human spirit. Or recently in Australia, we had a runner run like kilometres and kilometres to raise money for charity. And in the process, this guy, Ned Brockman, he had blisters on his feet. His support crew said, I don't know how he's still going. And we'd look back and we'd say that was a real statement of the spirit of that human being, because they were able to achieve something when it was physically difficult, when they were lacking the physical resources, when it felt like and it seemed like the smart thing to do was give up. There was something else at work in that guy. And if there's something else at work in that human being, I think it's not too much to say there is something else at work in you and I, something beyond just our physical capabilities, something beyond just pure mental determination. And what we see in here is that there is something actually at work in this world that we are in that is beyond just you and I. And that as we go through this work of rebuilding, there will be moments when we feel like the mountain is too high to climb, that when it is beyond us. And yet the invitation here is that God says, I am with you, that there is something of me with you in this moment. And I want you just to pause right now and just breathe that in, that God is with you in this moment. And that is not just speculation, but that will actually bring more resources than any amount of strength or might than you can muster. Bring all that, bring all your energy, all your skill, but there is the Spirit of God, it goes even beyond that. And in this moment of rebuilding, I want to just come down here and say, well, what does it mean to cooperate in these moments? And it says here, Zerubbabel is the one who laid the foundation of this temple, and he will complete it. And then you will know that the Lord has sent me. This is hard. I think uncertainty makes everything more challenging.
Yes.
And sometimes that is external certainty. And one of our friends this morning around this table shared that they went through the loss of a personal relationship that was so significant that it really changed the way that they saw themselves. And he shared quite personally, he just knew that something had to change and he didn't know what it was, but he just embarked. For him, it was this practice of movement.
Yep.
I'm going to get out of the house. I'm going to get off my backside. I'm going to move. I don't know where that's going. And he would say even there's probably still some of that happening.
Yep.
But he didn't know what he was doing. He just knew that he had to do something.
Yep.
And that kind of uncertainty can be confronting. And as you're watching this, if you're in the middle of rebuilding, I want to let you know, don't be intimidated by that uncertainty. You might not know what the next step is. But what we read here is that for this particular person, the sign that God was with them was only going to be found at the end. We want it at the beginning.
Yeah.
We want the fireworks. We want the voice from the sky. And there are moments when we are moving towards rebuilding that we will only know at the end.
Yeah.
Hang in there. When you feel like your resources have been exhausted, when you feel the questions about whether or not this is going to work are getting larger than the energy to complete the job, hang in there. It is not by your resources, it is not by your might, it is not by your power. That there is something divine at work in this moment. And you might only recognize that at the end. But actually the best way that we partner, we see right here, it says God rejoices to see the work begin. That in this project of rebuilding a city, of rebuilding a place of worship, that the exciting thing was seeing it start. And we might not know where the end is, but often we know the next step.
Yeah.
And if you're watching this right now, if you made it through to this point, I've no doubt that you are aware of what you need to rebuild. And for some of us, we are confronted by a challenge similar to what we've read about, that there are those of us who are rebuilding cultures, rebuilding cities, potentially even rebuilding nations. And there are those of us who perhaps what is in front of us is rebuilding our relationship, rebuilding our career, rebuilding a home. And I want you to know that in this moment that God is with you, that the Spirit of God is with you. You might not feel it right now. You might not be convinced that you're on the right path. But if you step forward into love, if you step forward into the nearness of God in your life, if you begin the work of rebuilding, that you will then see resources available to you beyond what you can imagine. And that's the life that Jesus invites us into. To rebuild the world the way that God would have it done. In a world where it seems like we have division and oppression, to actually rebuild it into a place of community and love, a place of generosity and hospitality. That's the invitation of Jesus. To make this a world where there are people built up and not torn down. The word of that famous prayer, may your kingdom come, may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. If you are stepping into a moment of rebuilding, then we want to invite you right now to simply pray with us. Jesus, I give you my life, that the challenge ahead of me will not be accomplished by my might nor by my power, but I will begin. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. Give me your Spirit. And if that's a step of faith that you're ready to take, then we want to invite you to trust Jesus and to pray with us right now. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. Jesus, I give you my life. Give me your life. If you pray that, then you will encounter, perhaps even already, that supernatural energizing that we talked about in this passage. The power simply to begin, even though the task looks mighty, to step forward. And if you've prayed that, then we would love to hear from you. Yeah. Please drop us a comment, send us a DM, and we would like to support you in the next step of whatever journey you're on. If you are passing through Southwest Sydney, we would love to see you around this table with us and friends. Thanks for tuning in. God bless you.